Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, an outrageous HOA banned wooden constructions in the neighborhood and insisted that my house is illegal. I'm not even part of this evil HOA, and yet they still fined me and vandalized my property. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. The title story starts like this. So I, male 52, have been living in the same house for my entire life. I grew up in this house, and after I finished college and moved away, I inherited it and came right back. We never had a major issue with the house aside from the normal wear and tear an old house can get. I knew there was an HOA because I remember my dad complaining about it when I was about 10 years old and telling somebody on the phone that he was not joining. A weird memory, but seeing a guy that never got mad yell into the phone is not something a kid forgets. Now, our house is made of wood, which for the time it was built was typical. I feel like even today if you ask people what a house is made of, a lot of people are gonna say wood. The HOA at some point though started forcing new homes to be built of brick and concrete, not wood. I also just want to point out that ever since that thing when I was 10, we had multiple HOAs, so they are all different, and the one with this whole brick thing was only about 5 years ago. I am driving back from dinner one night when I see that the house had graffiti sprayed on it. What was odd to me was that when kids spray paint things, they usually draw dirty pictures and vulgar words. This was just one word written on each side of the house though, which said eyesore. It did not seem like something kids would do, and now that I think about it, I never really heard of too much teenage mischief around here. The most is some eggs and TP on Halloween. The next day I started getting fines in the mail from the HOA that I don't even belong to, claiming that my house needs to be replaced because it's not allowed to be made of wood. What caught my attention was them in the letter calling it an eyesore as well. I don't need to be a detective to see the connection between the two events. I get more letters and fines that I've just been ignoring. I have no connection to this HOA and they cannot make me pay them or do anything they want me to. I like my house the way it is, but with the fees piling up and me finally finding evidence of them doing the graffiti, I go and confront the head of the HOA. Due to her haircut and bad attitude, I shall change her name to Karen. Now, Karen did not give a rat's ass about what I had to say regarding the fines in my house. Instead, she just insisted that the bylaws forbid wood homes and I need to change it, or she will simply keep sending me these big fines. It turns out that she just came into power and had a big thing of trying to enforce all the laws, with two big issues going over her head. One, the bylaw forbidding wooden construction cannot be applied to an already built structure, and two, that she cannot force anything on people who are not members. I get that 95% of the neighborhood was forced into joining, but I was grandfathered into my house, so I did not need to join her. I then leave and let her keep racking up my fines against me until it reached a point of like $25,000. I had been looking for a lawyer in the meantime because I was pissed about the graffiti and wanted to sue the HOA for that, along with the fact that I was getting harassed by them with the constant letters and fines being sent to me. Knowing a lawsuit was the only way to stop somebody like Karen. In addition to a lawyer, I hired a private investigator to help look into the fact the people in the video doing that to my house are connected to Karen directly. Also, to dig into when the home was built and all that, so I had just more proof that my home existed within my family even before this HOA was established, in case she wanted to try and pretend that I was not exempt from joining. He also looked closely at Karen to find any other bad behavior I could use against her character. Before my lawsuit, I found out something juicy and handed it off to my lawyer. It turned out that Karen had been going into the bylaws and just changing things as she wanted them. Not making new laws, but changing existing ones just enough to get people in trouble and be able to fine them, without a vote or even letting people know about it. We went to trial and Karen was just destroyed by everything I had against her. I was getting her in trouble for fining me, harassing me, and trying to force me into her HOA. It turns out that unless I agreed to it, them sending me all those letters counted as solicitation for the HOA. Something like that. She was also found guilty of orchestrating the entire thing to vandalize my house. Now here is where it gets interesting, because I hired this private investigator. We found out that she did this to about 4 other homes that were all made of wood too. Corruption of power is not something this judge took lightly, and Karen got in major trouble. She had to pay restitutions for the vandalism and harassment. She was also forced to step down from the HOA, losing any amount of power she already had, facing even fines for messing with the bylaws. You would think that she got very lucky staying out of prison for all of this, but she tried to push her luck. Now, with no reason except revenge and nothing to lose, she decided to come after my house again. Instead of spray paint, she got more violent and tried to break my house in a bunch of ways. Breaking windows, hitting the drain pipe with a bat and throwing dirt for some odd reason. I called the police and she just kept going until they showed up and arrested her. She had to pay me again to fix all this stuff, but since she was already in trouble for messing with my house in the first time, she was being charged with destruction of property and repeated harassment. She was now being put behind bars after narrowly escaping it the first time. It just baffles me why she felt like doing this again. She did not have the power to try and make me rebuild the house, and she was not gonna benefit from this anyway. It was just a purely crazy move on her part that made me feel like I was in a weird dream or something. I don't know if she's coming back once she eventually gets out of prison, but it makes me wonder if she will learn her lesson. Or just come right back to try and attack my house again for the wood offending her. And yeah, Ripe Stars, honestly, I would not be surprised in this case if this Karen either had some drug issues or some kind of severe mental health issue. I hope she gets the help she needs, but honestly, I doubt that she learned her lesson. Let's hope for OP that you won't be coming back again. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. My family has always owned a farm, and over the years I took on more responsibility until I was running it all on my own. I am now a middle-aged man and I love what I do. Being able to care for crops and animals is the highlight of my day, and I would not change it for the world. I have a large property that is bordered by some smaller homes on one side. The majority of folks living there wanted to either escape the city or have lived in the country all their lives and love it. I am close with most of them and often share my eggs or produce just to be friendly, something my parents raised me to be. A year or two ago, a woman that was living in one of these houses passed away after living there for 39 years. She had moved there with her husband and continued to live there even after he had passed away. I had talked with her in the past and she had explained that her son Andrew would be inheriting the land after she passed. Part of me assumed that this guy would just sell the land, but he actually ended up moving in. I did not greet him right away because I wanted to give him time to settle in, but after a few days I made up a care package of some fruits, veggies and fresh milk. He answered the door with a neutral expression and asked what I needed. I explained that I owned the farm behind him and wanted to welcome him to the area with some goodies, something that his mother had always appreciated. He seemed less than pleased, but took the basket anyway. I turned to leave. The way he was acting made me wary and a little nervous, but he stopped me to ask if I always drove my tractor so early in the morning. I explained that yes, it was necessary to maintain the farm and get important parts of my job done, and he asked if I would mind starting it later in the day so he could sleep in. I just laughed and assumed he was joking before saying no, waving goodbye and leaving to head back. I honestly thought it was an attempt at a joke. When you move to live behind a farm, it is expected that there might be some farm-related noise early in the morning, and most people prefer it to the sirens and shouting that often occur in a busy city. But my new neighbor took my reaction to his statement a little too personally. He frequently complained about noise and how dirty my animals are. And yeah, they are a little dirty, but that's reasonable when they wander around in the grass and dirt all day long. He then even tried to imply that I was trespassing on his property one day while I was doing some weekly yard work. My land does come up pretty close to his, but there is a fence that separates our properties. I don't utilize the area near his yard very often, but I always make sure the grass is cut and weeded to keep everything looking good. He did not like me being so close to his property for whatever reason. Maybe he thought he deserved more space for himself, it's anyone's guess. So I went on a short vacation and had someone care for the animals and crops while I was gone. They did not take on all of my usual duties, only the things that were most necessary for the farm to continue prospering. I was so glad to have some time off. I wake up early every morning and spend most of the day on my feet and causing strain on my back. Plus, I rarely get to see any of my friends with how early I end up going to bed, so having time to catch up with them felt amazing. When I got back, everything seemed fine. The animals were happy and the plants seemed healthy. I slipped back into my routine quickly and decided to mow the area since it had been put off for a little while. When I got to the area closest to Andrew's house, I noticed something was off. I could see indentations in the grass on my property that had not been there before. So I got off my mower and took a closer look, stepping up to observe the fence as well. As I was looking, Andrew came out of his house and began shouting about me trespassing on his property. I asked what he meant when I was on my side of the fence, and he scoffed, saying that I probably moved the fence myself just to trick him. I started to feel confused and overwhelmed, so I began trying to move the border back in place, which was pretty much impossible, but he just kept yelling at me and trying to get me to get off his land. He eventually pulled out his phone and called 911, all the while I stood there in shocked silence. Leaving would not do the situation any good, so I decided to wait it out. The police arrived soon enough and Andrew ran up to greet them and talk with them. I hung back and waited for my neighbor to lead them back to the fence, and once the officers saw me, they greeted me. Everyone in town knows me or knew my parents before me, so I am on good terms with the police in the area. We began catching up a little bit and I could see frustration growing on Andrew's face. He brought the conversation back to the land dispute and the officers could clearly see that the fence had been moved. However, they immediately questioned Andrew's story since I would have no reason to alter the boundary between our land. Andrew only grew more and more upset, even though the officers did not plan on reprimanding him for moving the fence. He reached for a machete he had been using to cut through some thick shrubbery that was invading his yard, and I thought he was cleaning up to go back inside. Instead though, he made a move towards me with the weapon, but he did not move fast enough and I easily ducked and pushed him back. He landed hard on the ground and the cops quickly got him to drop the weapon and then restrained him. It all happened so suddenly and Andrew was soon placed in a police car and taken away. I was shocked, but after speaking with the police a little longer, I calmed down a bit and went back to my farming duties. That should have been the end of the story, but unfortunately there was more to come. In the weeks that followed this incident, there had been an increase in complaints from people in the neighborhood about visitors trying to find Andrew and making a lot of noise. When I was mowing near his house again, I heard some frantically knocking on his door. They poked their head around and saw me, immediately approaching and assuming I was Andrew. I explained that he was not there and I owned the farm in the back. I left that encounter with a weird feeling and decided to call up the officers from before and mentioned that they might want to look further into it. As it turns out, he was dealing drugs out of his house, which would explain him coming at me with a knife while police are present, and the police added that to the charges already against him. The reason he wanted me to get in trouble was to force me to stay further away from his property. Every time I mowed near his yard, he became paranoid that I would discover his illegal activity and contact the authorities. Obviously, his plan backfired and it's highly unlikely that he's gonna be back in that house anytime soon, if at all, which I don't have a problem with. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, I am just speechless. How you can even live next to a neighbor like this is just unfathomable. Either way, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support me. Thank you so much. The next one is titled Steak Karen. So last year was my mom's 60th birthday. With lockdown we could not do a big party, but instead I did a socially distanced meal for her, my dad and me. She wanted a steak dinner with all the trimmings. I went down to the supermarket a few days beforehand. Said supermarket has these specially cut steaks in vacuum packs and a deal of 3 for £10. I was choosing steak and noticed a woman close by doing the same and picking up several of them. I took my 3 steaks, put them in my trolley and moved on. I moved on, got the remainder of my list and then thought of getting wine. So then I moved away from my trolley whilst choosing. When I turned back, that customer from before was leaning over my trolley. Me, hi, this is my trolley. Her, oh I know, I'm just taking one of your steaks. Me, what? Why would you do that? I chose those, you were there too, I saw you pick some up. Her, right, but I got 14 and I need one more. Me, I have 3. You are not taking one of mine. I deliberately pulled my trolley away from her at this point. Her, you have to. I need it for the multi-deal. Me, and I needed to feed 3 people, so that's a clear no from me. Red in the face by now, she said, I will go get a manager then. Me? Go ahead. She runs off and I finish choosing my wine. 5 minutes later, I am waiting to get checked out when the lady comes over with the manager. She stood back with this smug look I could see through her mask while the manager came over. Manager, ma'am, this lady says you stole one of her steaks. Is that true? Me? No, I picked up 3 at the freezer and later on found her leaning over my trolley and saying she would take one. She said she needs it for the multi-deal. The manager sighed. Manager, I knew it. She does this often. I'm so sorry to trouble you. Enjoy your day. Me, you too. And good luck with her. The manager sighed again and walked away. As I checked out, I saw him guiding her away from the till points. A few minutes later, I heard a security to the meat aisle announcement as I was leaving. The steaks were lovely, but not worth stealing from someone else's trolley. The next one is titled Airport Karen. So this probably needs some context before I can start. Both of my parents are divorced and live in separate states. I live with my mom and grandparents in Nashville, Tennessee, while over school breaks I visit my dad in Rochester, New York. I have flown alone since I was 5, and when I turned 13, my parents said it was okay if I travel without an escort on my layovers as long as I text them when I am boarding when I land. Fair enough. So this happened when I was 16. Now, I don't look my age and never have. There is a bad combination in my family, which is short jeans and a baby face. I was lucky enough to inherit both. To give you a rough image, I'm a 5-foot tall girl who weighs about 125 pounds with a baby face, easy for people to mistake me as younger than I am. Well, flying was always the worst offense because I was alone. I also have had bad anxiety and stutter a lot when I'm nervous, so it only adds to the age confusion even more. I was coming back from New York and had a 2-hour layover in Baltimore. I decided to get some food at Chipotle. While I was eating at the food court minding my own business and scrolling through my phone, this middle-aged white blonde woman with her 2 kids walked up to me. We will just call her Karen. Karen, hi honey, are you okay? OP, yes, why do you ask? Well, you seem young and you're by yourself. Oh great, here we go again. This was not the first time this happened, so I calmly told her that I was fine and thanks for the concern. And well, apparently, Karen did not like my answer. Her tone soon changed from a caring, concerned citizen to a demanding bitch. She told me I was not fine because I was a minor by myself and needed adult supervision to fly. I mean, she was correct about the minor part, but the supervision part was BS. I was flying Southwest, who allows anyone 12 and older to travel by themselves, but someone is still supervising you on the flight until you are 15. I did not need adult supervision to be in the airport past security alone, and I told her this. I politely asked her to leave me alone, and I understand the confusion. Karen was not having it though. Karen, you are lying. OP, how? Karen, I have kids and I know the airport policy about minors. OP, clearly you don't. I've already said I'm fine. Can you please leave me alone? No. Where are your parents? It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. I need to complain to them. At this point, I was getting annoyed. I didn't want to tell her about the fact that my parents were divorced, but back then, I saw it as the only way for her to fully understand the situation and leave me alone. OP, ma'am, I am 16 years old, my mom is in Nashville waiting for me and my dad is in New York. Neither of them are in this airport and they both know I'm by myself and they are okay with it. I am allowed to have a layover by myself and I'm not considered an unaccompanied minor when I am 16 years old according to the airline. Now please leave me alone. No, you are lying. How am I lying? I know you're lying because I have children. I know how rebellious they are, and you are definitely not 16 years old. I was getting mad at this point. For one, what right do you have to tell me how old I am? And secondly, your children look 7 and 5, a little too young to be going through a teenage rebellion. I stood up, put my food in my bag and told her, I think I know how old I am. Karen, where's your proof? I took out my driver's license. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have, but I was desperate for her to go away with not only my birthday, but the fact that I had one in the first place signified that I was 16 or older. I did not want to show this lady my other info, so I let her see the birthday and nothing more. Karen was not gonna swallow her pride and walk away. Karen, that still doesn't excuse you from walking around the airport by yourself. How do I know you're not running away from home? I want to tell her that even if I was, it was none of her business. I repeated Southwest policy to her and told her that if she still did not believe me, she could go on their website and check for herself or ask an employee. I then repeated for her to leave me alone or I would get security. My bluff did not seem to affect her, and she said I was not going anywhere and I had to come with her and find my parents. I simply told her no and began reaching for my backpack. The Karen grabbed my wrist and started pulling me. I yanked my wrist away, grabbed my backpack and started running. At that point people were watching and her kids seemed distressed, but I did not care. I made a run for my gate. Now, I'm not very athletic, but I'm definitely faster than this overweight single mom. I eventually made it to my gate and took a seat at one of the chairs. Still feeling uneasy, I told the lady at the gate what happened and that I was still shaken up. She understood and said if she saw a woman matching the description near the gate, she would make sure she did not come near me, and if she did, security would be alerted. Well, turns out my gut was right, and after an hour I saw her looking around the different gates. I told the lady and she nodded. She instructed me to get behind the desk as the Karen approached, and here's basically the conversation. "Excuse me, that child behind you is not allowed to be in the airport by herself." She turned to me and asked me if I was an unaccompanied minor. I answered no. "Woman, if she is not an unaccompanied minor, then she can be in the airport by herself." "Karen, she is lying. She cannot be 16. She showed me a fake ID." "Woman, oh really?" She turned to me and asked to see my boarding pass. I gladly handed it to her. She reviewed it and said it looked fine. She then asked to see what I showed the Karen. I handed her my driver's license and then she also said it looked fine. Karen then demanded the woman at the desk handed me over to her so she could take me to her gate and find my parents. This scared me. I knew I was not going anywhere with this woman, but it didn't stop me from being scared. "Woman, ma'am, is this girl your child?" "Karen, no." "Woman, then I'm afraid I cannot give her to you. I can assure you she's in good hands." "Karen, no she's not, because she's rebellious and lying. I am clearly more qualified to take care of her considering I have children and you don't." That did it. At this point I could feel a panic attack coming on. The nice woman must have noticed this. She told the Karen that either she goes to her gate and leaves me alone or security will be called. Karen huffed and puffed, saying the front desk ladyboy did not know her own airline policies and she will be calling 911 for child endangerment and Southwest was gonna get shut down for this. The lady at the desk only nodded. After Karen was done with her rant, she walked away before security could come. Before she left, the lady asked her name so she could file a complaint for her, an obvious lie, and she told her. "We will just keep her name as Karen." The lady at the desk offered to find her gate, informed them of what happened and made sure she did not leave her gate to make me feel safer. I agreed and we found her gate was in the international terminal. Knowing this woman wanted to take me to a completely different terminal, the international terminal no less, made me even more scared, but I was assured everything was gonna be alright. Her gate was informed about the situation and they said that they would make sure she would not leave the terminal once she arrived. It made me feel a lot better. I am 19 now and still have not grown taller. I'm in college now and still fly by myself. I am still a little shaken up from the whole thing, but I still fly on my own and I make sure to carry around my ID and passport, and if anyone asked if I needed help, I would quickly answer no and walk away. That may make me look more suspicious, but I don't care. I would rather come across as rude than have to deal with another crazy Karen. And wow, ripe stars, I am really glad for OP that he essentially did not get kidnapped by a Karen. That could have ended very quickly, very badly, but thankfully the situation was resolved. Either way, if you enjoyed the content I put out daily, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and enable the bell notifications to not miss any of my uploads. And the next one is titled, Manager Malicious Compliance Was Never So Sweet. This was a few years ago when I worked in a 4-star hotel chain. This chain would be very well known and was part of a larger company that had hotels of varying status. I was about 24, there were a few of us who worked primarily in room service and the breakfast shift was always a solo shift. One morning I started and as was customary, I started doing my prep. Folding napkins, setting up 5 to 6 trays with pastries, etc. Per the pre-ordered breakfast cart, so I would only need to grab the correct tea and coffee and hot food later, as well as a few extra all-purpose trays for the people who call for room service last minute. I just got finished with this when the duty manager, I cannot remember his full name but nickname was Prem, bursts into the kitchen with a dirty plate in his hand and sees me in my area while putting it in the pile of dishes for the kitchen porter. He tells across the kitchen, "What are you doing? It is so crazy out there that I have to help clear tables and you are back here? Get out and help." I replied that I had not gone up and walked the halls to collect the trays left out overnight yet, and he yelled some more and repeated that if he, a manager, is clearing tables, I better help regardless of if my job is actually in a different area. For the record, Prem was a menace. I witnessed him yell in college girls' faces until they cried several times. He would also routinely pick on anyone that was minimum wage floor staff. So I walk into the restaurant and the supervisor, Jen, is at the door and sees me walk in. She covers for room service and has worked in the past, so she knows I should be collecting trays now so that the place does not look like a war zone upstairs. She asks if I have done this and I say no, Prem sent me in to help because it is so busy. She says it is not very busy at all, they don't need me and I should go upstairs and collect the dirty trays. I walk back into the kitchen and Prem is still standing there. "What are you doing? I told you to go in and help." I went in and Jen said they don't need me and told me to collect the trays. He then accuses me of going to her and asking can I go collect trays to get out of helping, so I tell him he can in and ask her if she called me or if I approached her. This satisfies him that I'm at least not lying, but he is still not happy. He says, "I'm the duty manager. Manager. Jen is a supervisor. I'm higher up, so you do what I tell you. Go in there and help clear tables. I don't want to see you going up to collect trays." I go back into the restaurant and Jen looks at me confused. I tell her that Prem insists that I help and won't let me go upstairs and says he outranks her, so she says I should join the guys at Station 1 and help their area. Breakfast passes and I pop out a few times to do my room services and come back with not much issue. My shift is until 3 PM and breakfast ended at 10:30 AM. At this point nobody has been upstairs and housekeeping will have been putting out dirty trays. I get a call on the room service mobile from a housekeeping manager saying that floor 4 has a dozen or so trays in the hall. I'm sorry, the duty manager has prioritized other areas at the moment and has said I cannot go up. I start doing my afternoon prep, polishing cutlery and the like. About 12 PM, I get another call, this time from the housekeeping's top manager. She tells me there is trays everywhere and I politely apologize and explain that my duty manager has used the exact words, "I don't want to see you going up there to collect trays." She accepts this without question and asks that I help when I can. At 2 PM, I get a call from the hotel's director of operations regarding the trays. At this point, there are trays in the hallways on all 7 floors and the place looks filthy. Again, I politely explain what instructions I have received from Prem and this is accepted without further question and he says he will inquire into it. 3 PM arrives and I have not heard anything else, nor have I cleaned up the pigsty upstairs. My replacement arrives and I tell him what happened and apologize for the fact that he will have to collect these, but tell him why. He laughs and decides to leave it until somebody else calls and informs him they are there. Shortly after this, Prem left the company. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.